Hello friends, welcome back to my YouTube channel and welcome to another Tumbler tutorial. In this video, we are going to be creating a split design using this 25-ounce shaker cup from Craft Haven. So of course, I'm going to start out by prepping my cup. I sanded the surface of the cup down with an 80 grit sanding block, and now I'm cleaning off all of that sanding residue with some 91% rubbing alcohol. Now the shaker cup that we're using has a screw-on lid, so we've got some threads up at the top of the cup that we want to protect throughout our process. So I'm going to take some electrical tape and I'm going to run that tape right over those threads on our cup. And now when we decorate our cup and when we glitter it and paint it and everything, we're going to bring our paint and glitter a little bit higher than we want to end with, if that makes sense. In my opinion, it's just easier that way, and you guys will see what I mean later. But we're just going to leave that electrical tape right on the threads, and then we'll clean up the top rim of the cup a little bit later in our process. Now we are going to be doing a split design here, like I said a couple seconds ago. So I'm going to start by taking a piece of tape on the bottom of my cup, and I'm going to just place it about halfway through. I'm going to measure, make sure that each of my sides are even, and then I'm going to bring that tape up the sides of the cup. Now obviously the goal here is to make sure that our tape, one, is placed straight, and two, make sure that our sections are split evenly. So once I've got my tape placed, I'm going to take my tape measure and just go along the top rim to make sure that those two sides are even, adjust my tape as I need, and then I'll tape off that remaining side of the tumbler, and we'll deal with that a little bit later. So on this first side of our tumbler, we're going to do almost like a glitter ombre burst design. So I'm going to use 3 different glitter colors, and I'm going to use 3 different cuts of glitter for each color. So we've got a dark blue, a light blue, and a white, and I'll have all of these color names listed in the description box down below, along with a link and a discount code for you if you want to grab any of them. And I just painted on my cup a blue and a white. You can see I've got the blue on the top and bottom, and then a white little burst in the middle. And then I'm going to go in with the epoxy method. I'm using the Artist Cure epoxy from Flynn's Sister's Supply Shop. I'll have that linked down below as well, along with a discount code, of course. Okay, so we've got our thin coat of epoxy on our tumbler, and we're ready to go in with our glitter. I'm going to start with our darkest, chunkiest, which is Pacey Witter. And I'm going to do this really, really light, okay? So I just want super sparse coverage, like really just the slightest, tiniest bit of this color, because we're going to go in and add our fine cuts. And I don't want this to be overpowering in any way. I just want a slight chunky vibe on there so that we can have some depth in our colors. So we're just going to go very, very light on the very bottom of the tumbler. So we're going to do our dark blue, our lighter blue, and then our white will be in the middle. So I'm going to repeat the same thing up on the top, going really, really light here. Okay, and then we're going to use Oh Suzanna as our next chunky color. This is our lighter blue, and I'm going to go a little bit heavier with this one. This is going to be really like our blending color. So I'm going to cover most of the blue area with this, and I'm going to fade it down into that darker blue as well. So you can see it kind of covers it up, but that's going to add a lot of depth down there. And then we're going to go on the top and again do the exact same thing. Now it's okay if you let your blue go into your white. That's totally fine. The decal we're using is darker, so it's going to show up even if we put that blue glitter all over. So there's that. We've got plenty of room for our white, so we're looking good. This is our lightest color, so I want to really amplify the coverage there with this chunky before we go in with our finer cuts of the darker colors. So I'm going really full coverage there. And I'm just going to slightly fade this down into our blue. Not as heavy on the coverage when we're fading. You just really want to go heavy through this middle section here. So there's our base, and now we'll go in with our finer cuts to build the blend. We're going to use Seaside as our darker blue color. And again, I'm going to go really sparse, really just bring that color kind of up like maybe half an inch, if that. I'm going to cover the whole bottom of the cup with the dark blue though. and then really lightly just bring that darker blue in. You can see my hand is just kind of like trembling a little bit. That's what you want. You just want a really light shake of glitter. And you want to aim for the bottom rim of your cup so that when your glitter hits your cup, it's actually going to hit a little bit up here, and that's what we want. We don't want to aim for here and then have your glitter go up too far. So you're going to aim for the bottom of your cup, bottom rim, and then that glitter is going to nicely fade down into the lighter blue section. You can see that there. And then again for the top, same thing. I'm going to go kind of like the first 1/4 of an inch. And then I'm just going to tremble my hand. I don't know if tremble is the right word. Just like lightly shake my hand to blend that blue all the way down. Next, we're going to take Blue Boy and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to go pretty heavy here. And with Blue Boy, I'm going to go pretty heavy in that area where we put Oh Suzanna. And I'm also going to fade it down into our dark blue. And then also very lightly fade it up into our white. We want a really seamless blend between the blue and the white. The goal is for you to not realize or notice where the blue ends and the white begins. You want that to really just be a seamless fade there. And at the top, same thing. I'm going to go really heavy where we put Oh Suzanna, fade down or up into the darker blue, and then gently fade into the white. Next, we'll take our fine cut white, which is Opal Majesty. And again, I'm going to go really full heavy coverage here right in the middle of the tumbler. Just building that up super heavy. And then I'll fade this all the way down. You don't really need to focus on where you're putting this. Your white is going to blend with everything. So you can just really let it fall all the way down to the bottom if you want to. That's only going to help the fade look better. And that's where we're at so far. Now, if you want, you can stop here. You don't have to use an extra fine if you don't have the extra fine cuts that match. It's totally fine if you just use the chunky and the fine. That will give you a good enough blend. But I always prefer to do a chunky or a mini chunky, a fine cut, and then an extra fine. I just feel like it really helps with the coverage. It helps build a better blend. So I like to go in with the extra fine as well. So I'm going to do that now. But again, if you don't want to, or you don't have the colors to match, it's totally okay. Use your chunky and your fine and you will be totally okay. So for my extra fine dark blue, I'm using Moon Tower. And I'm going, again, really light with this coverage. I don't want too much of this dark blue. I just want it to be a light, subtle hint, kind of like a builder color. So I'm going really light there. And then again, same thing up at the top, really light. And then fading it very gently down. I'm using Bubbles for our lighter blue extra fine color. And we're doing the same thing that we did with the fine cuts. It's the exact same process. We're really just building the coverage and building the blend, making everything look as seamless as possible. Now finally, I'm going to take Brite, and that's my extra fine white. So I'm going to go again really, really heavy in the middle, build up that coverage as much as I can, and then I'm just going to fade it down basically all the way to the bottom, not really paying attention to where it goes. It's just going to help us build that blend. So there's what our ombre looks like. Really liking it. I'm going to go in, I think, with our light blue one more time to help us build the blend between the light blue and the white. I always go back a few times, like I'll go back and forth between colors until I'm happy with what the fade looks like. Sometimes that's twice, sometimes it's like 8 times. I just go back and forth until I like how it looks. And with the epoxy method, you have a long enough working time that you can do that. So you don't need to rush or hurry through this process. Really take your time and make sure that you're happy with the fade before you move on or let it dry. There we go. So I'm going to remove my tape and then I'm going to let this sit and dry overnight before we move on and glitter the rest of it. I'm actually going to add this light blue on top of here just to kind of lighten it up a little. It's kind of a stark contrast from the bottom to here, so I just want it to blend a little better. So that looks good. All right. If you let your epoxy cure with this like overlayer on here, you risk pulling up this glitter or messing up your glitter, or it will just be really difficult for you to remove your tape. So I recommend removing your tape right away, especially if you're like me and you forget. All right, so my glitter side is totally dry now. Now I'm gonna move on to the other side and I'm gonna base paint that with some white acrylic paint. Of course, I'm using the Delta Creative Ceram Coat brand, my favorite. And I'm just gonna do a really, really good solid coat of white paint here. I'm gonna let this sit and dry for about 30 to 45 minutes before I go in with my Crystalac glitter glue to adhere my glitter. Now, if you want to do the epoxy method on this side as well, you're totally welcome to. For me, it was just easier to not mix epoxy and just use the glitter glue. So once I've got a thin, even layer brushed all over my cup, I'm going to go in with the same white glitter that we used for our middle section on the other side, and that's Parabatai. For this, I'm only going to use Parabatai by itself. I'm not going to layer the fine and the extra fine on there. You really don't need to because we're not blending anything, and the coverage with Parabatai is really good on its own. So I'm going to cover the half with this glitter and then let it totally dry, and then I'll add 2 coats of epoxy after spray sealing it with some clear glass spray from Rust-Oleum. All right, so our cup has 2 coats of epoxy on it, but it is not totally smooth yet. And because the vinyl and the decal we're going to use are clear or clear backed, we need the tumbler to be completely smooth, but also shiny underneath. So I'm going to sand down the cup really, really well, focusing on like the main body of the tumbler where the vinyl is going to go. So that we can then epoxy over that with a very thin coat of epoxy just to shine everything up again. And then we can go in with our decal and our vinyl and you won't see any of those dull sanding marks underneath either of those. So I'm going to give this a really good sanding, focus on the top rim here with my Dremel, and then we'll sand down the bottom rim really well here. And then I will add another thin coat of epoxy, maybe like 10 to 15 milliliters. Okay, so just to show you really quick what I was talking about in the beginning about bringing our glitter down a little bit onto the body of our cup, you essentially want to treat this top area of your cup like the same way you would the top rim of any other cup you work on. You want to leave a really thin line of stainless steel right above your glitter before your cup turns at that 90-degree angle and becomes like the actual top of your cup. Hopefully that makes sense, but you really want to just expose that super thin line of stainless steel, and that's where your epoxy will form its final seal. It just will be better than doing it on the top where that lid is going to screw on and touch that. So we're going to sand that down really well, essentially just treat it the same way you would the rim of any other tumbler that you're working on. All right, so we've got our coat of epoxy on our cup now. Our cup is completely smooth. You can see there's no sanding marks. We are ready for our vinyl application. The decal we're using is from Peachy Olive Glitters. It says focus on the good, number 747 if you're looking on the website. So I'm going to get rid of this extra clear around here. And then I'm going to cut away the backing really close to the decal so that we can make sure everything is centered. And we're going to use these 2 flowers that are in the middle of the decal as our measuring points to make sure that everything is in the right place. Take a piece of that tape I used earlier, and I'm going to put it on the top of our decal so that we have access to our measuring points. And I'm just going to place the decal first in an eyeballed spot that I think might be centered. Tape it down, and I'll take my measuring tape and start at the edge of that floral. And we've got about 1 inch, so I'm going to make sure that we have 1 inch on the other side. And we're pretty close, so I'm not going to adjust it and risk messing it up. So I'm going to take this tape now. And this is kind of awkward, but I'm going to take it and just put it down on the other half so that we can pull this backing away. We just want to keep the tape in a place that keeps our decal in the right position, if that makes sense. So then I'm going to get rid of all of the backing. And then carefully just smooth the decal on. So there's that. And then we'll get rid of the tape. I put it a little bit too high. This isn't quite even, but that's okay. Now you may have noticed in the beginning of the video, I was planning on using a different vinyl, but I put it on the cup and I just didn't really love how it looked with the other side. So I went through my vinyl and I found this sheet of vinyl. This is called Boltz and it's from Peachy Olive Glitters. So I'm going to use this instead. Of course you can use any vinyl you want, but I thought that the lightning bolts would go really well with just the plain like black and blue kind of vibe we have going here. And just look a little bit better with this other half than the original vinyl that I had picked out would have. We're going to take a piece of the vinyl and I'm just going to use this edge as my guide. We're going to place it like as straight as we can get it, really. I'm going to line up the straight edge with the straight edge, if that makes sense. Just again, making sure that we have enough for the entire cup. I'll take my pen and just make a mark there. Maybe. And we'll just trim this off this way. And then for the bottom, I'm going to leave a little excess at the top, the same way I always do. And then for the bottom, we'll mark off a little bit past where we need to be so we can just cut off after it's already applied. So I'll just trim that section right there. All right, I've got my piece of tape to help me get my vinyl in place so that we can actually apply it to the tumbler. So I'm going to start in the middle, the same way I always do. I want to keep this as straight as possible so that our bolts don't look wonky on our tumbler. So I'm just going to place them as straight as I can. And then I'll take my tape and adhere one edge of the vinyl to the cup. And we'll just apply it like normal. So I'm going to use my big squeegee, pull back a little bit of the backing. And then we'll smooth it on with our squeegee. Now we'll go through and we can cut off the excess and we'll use the tape lines as our guide. Since this is clear vinyl, you don't technically have to tape it off, but I just think it's easier to see the blue tape line versus trying to look through the vinyl and find your glitter lines. All right, so there's our top. And then for the bottom, I'm going to cut around all of these partial bolts. And we'll go in and hand place some so that everything looks pretty seamless from the sides of the cup down to the bottom. So if the bolt goes past the bottom, we're going to keep it. Just cut kind of close to it. And then we'll pull it down around the bottom rim.
like that. And then we'll take some bolts from our excess and we'll cut them out. And we'll place them mostly on the bottom of the tumbler. Just like that. So you can see a little bit of it from the side, but mostly covering the bottom. And we just want to make sure that we don't have any lifting or bubbles or anything anywhere. So we'll go through and just make sure everything is pressed down really well. We have all of our tape removed. And remember, the clear vinyl you can trim and make, you know, adjustments to however you want. It's not going to adjust your, or it's not going to ruin your regular image or your decal. So if you need to cut away any bubbles or anything that are in the clear area, go for it. So there's where we're at. And now we'll just add our vinyl striping, and then we will epoxy over this and then get started on the lid. For our striping, we're going to use some textured metallic vinyl. This is Cricut brand, but I thought silver would go well. I know I'm a champagne gold type of girl, but I just feel like silver goes better with the blue and white tones. So I'm just gonna lay these down here, and these are 0.12 inches wide. And because the vinyl is textured, we can go right over those vinyl lines and nothing's gonna show through the vinyl. If you're using a different type of vinyl for your striping, you'll want to make sure that you epoxy over your surface so that it's totally smooth, so that you don't see these vinyl cut lines through or underneath your vinyl for your striping. But if you're using textured vinyl, you can go ahead and do it right now because it's so thick, you won't be able to see it through. That's one thing I love about textured vinyl. And I'm just gonna make sure that everything meets up perfectly down here at the bottom.
All right, so I added a coat of epoxy over my vinyl striping and my vinyl and my decal and all of that. And now I'm going to clean up the top rim of my cup once again before I add another little detail and then my final coat of epoxy. So you can see that my epoxy has come up to that top rim area, and we don't want our epoxy there. Remember, we want our epoxy to form the final seal on the actual body of the tumbler in that very thin line of stainless steel that we sanded down earlier. So we're just going to sand down a little bit more from the coat that we just added, and then we will clean everything up with some rubbing alcohol. So you want to make sure you don't have any glitter, any epoxy, or anything near those threads or on that top little shelf area of your tumbler. So once I've got that all cleaned up, I decided that I wanted to add another little black element to the cup just to kind of tie everything together. I felt like it just needed something, so I cut out these really super thin black vinyl lines, and I'm just laying them right over the middle of our silver textured lines. This is totally an optional step, obviously, but I'm glad I did it because I feel like it really ties everything together. So I'm going to now re-tape up my cup. So I'm going to go through with my electrical tape. I'm going to stick my foam piece in there, and I'm going to go through with my electrical tape and tape the seams or the threads of the cup. And then I'm going to bring that electrical tape also up onto that foam piece to make sure that everything stays in place, and then I'll cover all of that with a piece of painter's tape just for some added extra security. And then I'll go in and add my final coat of epoxy. I'm again using the Flynn Sisters Supply Shop Artist Cure epoxy. My final coat was about 20 milliliters. So now we can get to work on the lid. So for the lid, I initially was going to do something different when I was going to use that different sheet of pattern vinyl. So ignore that my lid is painted white. You do not need to paint your lid for this technique. So what I did was measure my lid, and then I took some vinyl. This is sea glass vinyl from Craft Haven. It's the Craft brand or the Craft line. And I cut out a rectangle shape that is 1 inch high or wide and about 11.75 inches wide, I believe. And I'm just going to wrap that, as you can see, around the body of my lid. I'm going to remove this tape because you don't need it. And what we're going to do next is for this top little portion of the lid, I'm going to cut a bunch of slits in my vinyl and just lay it down flat. And we are going to rhinestone over this, so you're not going to see any of those lines or any of that texture or anything. So you can just do this. If you want to paint instead of vinyl, you absolutely can. For me, vinyl is just a quick and easy, cleaner process. So I'm going to get this vinyl laid down, and then I'm going to go to my little rhinestone station and get started on blinging. So for this lid, we're going to actually use two different types of stones. So for that top little shelf portion of the lid, we're going to use the Crystal AB transparent rhinestones, and these are from Flynn Sisters Supply Shop. I'm using the size SS8, and I decided that I wanted to try this new adhesive. This is from Hobby Lobby. It's the Ultimate Adhesive. It's Aileen's brand, and I don't really love it. It's a little too rubbery for me. So I used this for one little section, and then I went back to my Liquid Fusion, but you can use any adhesive that you prefer. So what I'm going to do here on this top portion of the lid with these SS8 stones, they line up perfectly to do the like honeycomb method. You can just do a row of 3, and so I'm just going to do basically like a straight line. I guess this isn't honeycomb method, but it's not scatter method. So I'm just going to line these up in rows of 3, and I'm going to go all the way around the top portion of the lid. And now for the main part of the lid, we're going to do the scatter method, which is my favorite way of rhinestoning. To me, it's just like a puzzle. It's kind of fun, kind of relaxing. I'm using my Liquid Fusion and my very fancy tool, my popsicle stick, to spread that Liquid Fusion all over my section of my lid. Now, these stones are Aqua, also from Flynn Sisters Supply Shop, and I'm using a mix of sizes here. So I've got SS12, SS10, and SS6. I also added a few little SS3 stones in there, and now I'm going to be using these for another project coming up very, very, very soon. So if you want to grab them, I will have them linked down below in the description box, and if you want to recreate both of the designs, you can use the same stones and everything. So I'm going to, as you can see, like I said, use the scatter method to just fill up this part of the lid. And now if you are somebody who is intimidated by rhinestones, or if you think you don't have the patience to do it, I get that comment all the time when I post rhinestone stuff. You don't have the patience, it takes too long, all of that. I would recommend starting with a lid or a keychain or something really small that you can bust out really, really quickly. I think this took me maybe like an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, but it's a great little stepping stone starter project to get into rhinestoning. Just doing the lid, quick and easy, and it's not as intimidating as an entire cup. So once we're all finished rhinestoning the lid, we are all finished with our tumbler. I am so excited to bring this to the gym with me. It's going to keep me motivated and happy when I look at it. Look at my little photo bomber dog. She's such an annoying little beautiful, perfect being. Anyway, here's the final design. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you give it a thumbs up down below. Let me know what you think down below in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you are not already, and everything is linked down below in the description box for you, along with some discount codes. Okay, I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you so much for watching. Love you. Bye. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a big thumbs up down below. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram and Facebook at Made by Manny and Mal. You can join my mentorship group at the website on your screen. I'd love to have you in the Elite fam. Be sure to subscribe to my channel if you are not already so you don't miss any of my new videos. And while you're here, here's another video for you to check out. I want to say a huge, huge thank you to my channel members and my Elite fam members. You guys make this channel possible. Okay, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Love you. Bye.